Alright guys, so you absolutely crushed it on the daily drive, the Audi R8 video. I think right now it's around 5.5k views, lots of comments, and I really appreciate the support on that. So, in learning that you guys enjoy seeing impractical cars and whether or not they can be daily driven, I'm gonna do the exact same thing with the Mazda Miata. So, today's topic is, can you daily drive a Mazda Miata, specifically the NA, which is the first generation? We'll be diving into a couple of pros and cons behind what I think is really good about the car and a couple of areas that you might want to consider when picking up an NA Miata. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. This is my 1992 Mazda Miata. I've had it since the spring and I'm filming this in November, so I've had it for a decent amount of time. I got it at 162,000 miles, which is actually pretty decent mileage considering I only paid $3,000 for the thing. It's the NA Miata, which means it's the first generation. It's got the pop-up headlights and just is really well known in car culture at this point. But yes, mine is the 1.6 liter, which they only made from, I think it's like 89 or 90 to 93. But yeah, the NA generation, the first generation, lasted from 1989 to 1997. So I had a really good run. Now, I do have to start off this video with a little bit of an apology because you're probably going to be hearing a lot of wind noise. You're probably going to be hearing a lot of bangs, mostly because my suspension is gone. That'll be replaced soon. Not like it's completely missing, I just haven't gotten a new set of coilovers yet. But it's also a 30-year-old car, so you're going to hear a lot of squeaks. You're going to hear a lot of odd noises. That's just how it goes. But yes, the NA Miatas came in two different types of engines. Like I said, this is the 1.6, but they also had the 1.8 available. They are inline fours. The 1.6 horsepower is right around 116. I highly doubt that is still the case. But as for torque, it's got about 100 pound-feet of torque, so definitely not the most powerful thing on the planet by any means. We have a lovely 5-speed manual here. I actually got this car because the main reason was I wanted to learn how to drive manual, and this was a great choice. The secondary reason why I got it is that I just wanted something fun to toss around, and I wanted something that was from the 90s, hashtag JDM life. But yes, it is very much still in the project stage. There's still a lot of things that I got to do to it in order to get it track ready. But yeah, that's the main couple of reasons why I purchased this car. Yeah, it's just overall it's just a really fun, super lightweight car. It's rear-wheel drive. It weighs just a little bit over 2,000 pounds. But yeah, the miles per gallon, it's 21 city and 27 highway. So again, by today's standards, nothing absolutely insane. It's actually a point for the pros of daily driving this car is that the miles per gallon really isn't bad, and it's a really good car enthusiast car. So basically, when Mazda was creating this car, they wanted to have a perfect weight distribution, open top car that could kind of slot in right underneath the RX-7. But yeah, let's start with the exterior of the car. I'm pretty big on exterior. I just really like design in various cars, especially sports cars. It's got this really sleek, just kind of classic 90s styling to it. It's very, very low. It's very small. I mean, anytime that you park this thing next to other modern cars, it seriously looks like a toy. It looks damn near close to fake. It's kind of humorous. But cars are getting a lot bigger as time goes on, so that shouldn't come as a surprise. Like hell, if you compare the R34 to the R35, R35 looks like an SUV. Given its small stature, it makes it very, very convenient, especially for city driving. Like, you can basically park this thing anywhere you want to. Now, a con against daily driving this is that it is very small and it's very low, so it's easy for these more modern day, bigger cars to just completely miss you and smash into you. We'll get into safety later. As far as headlights go and taillights go, those have both become extremely iconic because of how popular this car is. Of course, being the first generation, it does have the pop-up headlights, which is a big reason, if I'm being honest, why I went for this instead of an Indy, which is the second generation. But yeah, this is a personal opinion coming up. I'm not a big fan of convertibles, and I'm sure you guys are like, well, Marty, why did you buy a convertible? Well, I mean, these all were sold with basically soft tops, so I'm just not a big fan of the soft tops. I like the hard tops a lot more. I know that those things are sometimes as expensive as Miatas themselves. I'm planning on getting one at some point. I just think it makes the design a lot more sleek and tied together, and it's actually been really cool because this car, in as rough of a shape as it looks on the outside, you know, it's like 50 different shades of red, it's got Bondo peeking through, it's got some surface rust, it still really turns heads, especially when it comes to the younger car enthusiast generation, like people in middle school, people in high school. It just really resonates with them, which I'm very happy to see. Quick story, I was at a McDonald's and it was being worked entirely by high school kids, and I've never had this happen before, but they said through the speakerphone, you know, while they were taking my order, they were like, "Nice Miata, by the way," and then I pull up to the first window and they're like, "Oh, I love the Miata, always been a big fan," and pull up to the second window and they're like, "Oh, I love the Miata." Oh yeah, they actually told me to pull up and wait because they were making those fresh, cheeky nuggies. And the guy that brought it out, he was like, "Oh, I've always loved these." I'm like, Jesus. I didn't realize how much of a pull this car has on younger car enthusiasts. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised. These things are all over the place, different builds on like TikTok and Instagram. So that actually lines up, but it's still a very pleasant surprise. It's kind of like the R8 in a way because it brings smiles to people's faces, which I love when cars can do that. That about covers the exterior. Covering the interior, it's very small. The materials are primarily like that black plastic that's super generic and you see it in a lot of base models, and the other material is primarily cloth. So guys, if you're looking at an NA Miata, do not expect it to be ultra luxurious in any way. If that's what you're looking for, I would say this is not the car for you. For storage on the inside, we've actually got a nice shelf behind me. It's pretty wide. It can actually hold a decent amount back there, which I really like. We'll see if that changes when I get a roll bar installed. I get the feeling that will change. Now, please correct me in the comments if I'm incorrect about this, but cup holders in the stock interior of a Miata, I'm fairly certain that they did not come with them, which is kind of unfortunate, but as car enthusiasts, we can easily adjust and make do. Luckily, this one does have two cup holders installed right here behind the shifter. I pretty much never use them because with them being behind the shifter, if I have like a bottle or something there, every time that I shift back, I'm gonna be like hitting it, and it's gonna be a really weird angle where I have to lift my arm up and over it. So even though the cup holders aren't a factory option, at least I think, it's kind of a pain to have the cup holders right there. And I know there's other options, but that's just probably specific to this car or the cars that have stuff like the climate control, it's all extremely simple and straightforward. It's easy to find. The gauges are just that classic green 90s speedometer. You really can't mess up when you're reading it, so in that sense it's got a win there for sure. But otherwise, the regular driver controls like the windshield wiper, the lights, that's all very, very straightforward and easy to understand. As for the seats, they might have been more comfortable back when they were brand new, but these things are absolutely bare bones. That being said, they were surprisingly comfortable on a 2,000-mile road trip that I did out to Nevada. And if you haven't seen that video, I will link to it above, as well as in the description. But yeah, the seats, just normal manual adjustments. There is not much room to bring it back, because then you start running into the shelf. Obviously, this is a two-seater. Don't expect to haul around all your friends in it, and don't expect it to be a minivan. Oh, and the trunk space is actually super good. It's on the shallower side. I'm actually trying to figure out if the Miata can hold more than the Audi R8. That would be an interesting video. Just seeing how much stuff we can put into each car, but I feel like it's about equal. Now, one thing to be aware of is that with these soft tops, they tend to leak in some way or another. When I first got this car, I found out that when it rained, the car turns into an absolute bathtub. There was like at least 2 or 3 inches of water sitting in it whenever it rained. So that was a big pain, but that's just something to be aware of. The soft tops leak. You've probably had some water come in at some point. As for headroom, I haven't had an issue with people getting into this car yet. I fit in it perfectly fine. I'm 5'8". I believe I've had somebody that's like 6'2", 6'3" fit in here, and their hair is just kind of like barely scuffing the top of it. But yeah, that is something to be aware of. If you're on the taller side, you might need to get seats that are lower, closer to the floor of the vehicle in order to actually fit in this car. As for reliability, so first, since the NA Miata has remained a favorite among car enthusiasts and kind of just people in general that want a fun car, and the fact that there were so many of them made, there's still plenty of parts available, whether that's OEM or aftermarket, which is great. It makes parts extremely affordable and easy to find. But yeah, these little engines, they will easily cross 200,000 miles pretty much without even blinking. Of course, you have to keep up on your maintenance, like oil change, timing belts, etc., but very, very basic and standard stuff that you would see in any other car. And since this car is so simple, and again, parts are easily available, repair bills are damn near nothing, which is awesome. Another really common thing to look out for in Miatas is this thing called lifter tick or valve slap. I've heard it called both of those before. If you're going to look at an NA Miata and you start it up and you hear this ticking, there's a very good chance that it's actually lifter tick, which is really not that bad of a thing. Most Miatas will have this. The tough thing is that it's a little bit challenging to delineate between what a lifter tick is as well as what a rod knock is. What I found with lifter tick is that once the car is warmed up, it tends to not have that sound, that ticking sound, which is great. But if you notice that it's persistent, it might be a good idea to take it in and get it inspected before you purchase it, just to make sure you're not buying a car with a completely done engine. If you're looking to pick up an NA Miata, just check over the normal stuff: brakes, rotors, gaskets, seals, etc., and you should be good to go. With this car, I did have to get the rear main seal replaced, which involved getting the transmission taken out, and that was a hefty repair bill for a car like this, but it's worth it. But other than that, it's like you just got to double check on your radiator, make sure the car is running right, and then gaskets, spark plugs, just very standard stuff. Mine needed all of the above, and it actually turns out this entire time the engine was not timed correctly. So I drove it on a super long road trip when the engine wasn't timed correctly and didn't really suffer any kind of major consequences that I know of at this time. But everybody that's looked at it so far says it's okay. Another thing to consider is rust. Depending on where you get the car, rust will be better or worse. So just make sure you're doing a thorough inspection when you're looking at it. If you're buying an NA Miata and you're expecting it to be perfectly flawless, especially if you're looking around the $5,000 or lower price point, I would temper those expectations a little bit. It's a 30-year-old car, guys. Like, you're gonna have to do some stuff to it, unless the thing's in like perfect museum quality condition and has been serviced, you know, perfectly for the last 30 years. I would say, hey, plan on having a little bit of budget to fix some stuff in the car. Once you address those issues and potentially get some new parts, the car should be super, super reliable, which is a big win for daily driving. Now, as for safety and tech, there is none. Just kidding, but it is pretty damn sparse. God, I was just reaching for the paddle shifters here as if I was driving the R8. What I mean by sparse is, I think it's from years 90 to 93. The driver gets an airbag. The passenger doesn't. They're just like, yeah, screw the passenger. The dash is soft enough. But no, it was a totally different time when they made this car, so, but yeah, it's, if this thing gets hit by a modern car, the modern car is gonna win. This thing is gonna crumple like a piece of paper, which is unfortunate because, you know, then it's probably gonna total the car, but, that's how it goes. That's the risk you take when you drive classic cars, is that they're just not as safe, and safety is always evolving, always becoming better. As for technology, I can't even believe that I'm talking about that in an old school Miata. It's pretty much non-existent. Majority of models didn't come with ABS. Honestly, I think it's even impressive that they had ABS in the first place on select models. But this one doesn't have it. So if you have to slow down, you are gonna be locking up your wheels, buddy. And the really cool thing, in my opinion, is even though this car doesn't have a lot of tech, there's not a big old screen in the middle, it's actually very, very relaxing to drive, especially at night. You know, you don't have a big old screen that's just blaring you in the face. Just have the ambient green of like the gauges, which is so cool. Oh yeah, and given that these are a soft top, of course you lose the rigidity of a normal coupe, a normal hard top. So I would highly recommend getting a roll cage just for safety, and also if you're watching this, chances are you're probably going to want to track your R8 at some point, or R8, God, your Miata at some point. So make sure you get a roll cage. Most tracks require it anyways, and I know that when I get my roll cage, I'm going to feel a lot safer driving on roads like this. Now, as for the general driving experience, I really, really enjoy it actually, especially with this being my first manual car. I've really grown to love it, and especially now that we got the engine timed correctly, as well as some other maintenance items, it's just running like a top now. Like, it's just super satisfying to drive. So a big one to consider when daily driving is visibility. This car has plenty of it. I'm able to see around without any issues at all. The mirrors are nice and big, and yeah, I don't feel like I could miss a car next to me really at all. But otherwise, it is very, very well balanced, even with mind-blown suspension on this car. It's just crazy to me to think that this car, as satisfying as it is to drive, it's only going to become better as we add more and more parts to it. And if you want to follow along with the project, please be sure to check out the playlist Miata Project on my channel, and that way you can see how this thing is progressing. But yeah, it's just a very analog feeling experience, which is definitely lost for, I want to say, like 95% of the cars that are new and on the market today. It does not have power steering, at least this one doesn't, so it communicates what's going on extremely well. You can feel pretty much everything in the road. You can feel the cars behaving incorrect if needed. The only time that it comes into a little bit of a con is if you are parking, you have to put a little bit more muscle into it in order to get the wheel to actually move. As for power and get up and go, it is slow. But, you know, everybody says this, that's not the reason why you get a Miata. You get a Miata so you can go fast in the turns. And I definitely understand that. But it's not like, sometimes people talk about Miatas and they're like, oh, it's so slow, like you should never go on the highway with it. I'd say it's got, you know, usable power for just normal daily driving. I would say it's actually somewhat similar to a car that I used to own, which was a Honda Fit. It took roughly the same amount of time to get up to speed in the Honda Fit as it does with this car. As for the brake feel, when I first got it, it was basically non-existent. You had to like really press on that brake to get this thing to slow down. Since then we did upgrade to a very low-cost set of brakes and rotors, and that has fixed it up quite nicely. Again, you don't have ABS. It's not going to feel anything like a modern car, but yeah, it's a little bit more of like I suppose, an on and off switch. There's not quite as much travel, at least with this car. I don't know if it's different for other Miatas. Hopefully not, because then I'm going to start questioning if something's wrong with my brakes. But I'm sure the driving experience is going to change quite a bit as we start to add on more upgrades, which I am super excited about. But overall, I think that covers all of the areas that I've noticed in the car and some areas that I think you should consider. Basically, as long as you're willing to deal with the limited storage space, the fact that it's basically a vintage car now, and that you're not really going to have any kind of luxury or tech, I think you will enjoy this quite a bit as a daily driver. And if you're watching this video and thinking about purchasing an NA Miata, I couldn't recommend it more, especially if you're looking to buy this as your first car and you're a car enthusiast. I think it's a really good option. Just be aware of the safety not being all that great. I know that's not exactly the best thing to convince parents of, but yeah, I think that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Comment down below if you think you would add anything to this list. If you've owned or driven an NA Miata before, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for the support. Let's keep that subscriber growth going, and I upload every single Sunday, and I will see you in the next one.